Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori on Blog Talk Radio. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Friday morning, April the 8th. I'm glad to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. We're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And chat room is open, and I did pop the link in there again to what we're talking about, what we've been talking about for a while now. That's when you grow up in a dysfunctional home, Dysfunctional Families by George A. Boyd from Mudrashram Institute of Spiritual Studies, www.mudrashram.com. And it's called When You Grow Up in a Dysfunctional Family. And it was written in 1992 by George A. Boyd. It's really good information, and we're right down towards the end of it, so we should be able to finish this up and move on. But it's just been a really interesting look at dysfunctional families, and what happens within dysfunctional families and how it affects people, regarding boundary issues and damaged self, whole self, and the things that we, role playing that we might take on because of the situation within the home. And so it kind of encompassed a lot of different things, and I really thought it was worth looking at. So thanks everybody for being here. I appreciate it. I'm not a professional counselor or therapist. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own shows. I just wanted to be one more voice speaking out against child abuse and standing up to, for the protection of children, and also for survivors, to be another voice, because there's so many survivors of child abuse, right? So that's why I'm doing these shows. So you have to listen at your own discretion, because I'm talking about abuse. Abuse is a very sensitive topic for a lot of people. So you have to know what's good for you to listen to, and if you think the topics of abuse of any kind might bother you, you need to turn the show off, because I really just say it like it is, and don't sugarcoat it or minimize it. I just tell it like it is, and this type of material can be disturbing for a lot of people. So you have to know what's good for you to listen to. And young people under the age of 18, you have to have permission to listen to my shows, and that's because I believe in protecting children at all times. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and we're standing up to try to protect children's lives. We're all volunteers, and we all work really, really hard to do this. So you keep yourself safe. If you're under the age of 18, learn how to keep yourself safe when you're online. Type into your browser internet safety, online safety, and get some of the tips on how to keep yourself safe in a chat room and how to keep yourself safe online and what information to not give away, and how to keep yourself safe and your family safe, right? So important. So, excuse me, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my show, and that's because the topics are pretty sensitive, and a lot of people haven't heard a whole lot about abuse. So, because nobody's really, not very many people are talking about it out in the mainstream, we hear, we see these headlines that roll in about children being abused, and we don't hear too much, other information in mainstream media. So that's why young people, you may not have heard a whole lot about abuse, and so my shows can be pretty sensitive, and I think that young people should have someone who's an adult who can listen with you to make sure that it is something that's age appropriate for you to listen to, right? So thanks everybody for being here. I appreciate it. And we're going to get right into this topic here and hopefully finish this off. This has been a great bunch of information here. And we were looking at we're looking at the goals and taking a look at setting goals for ourselves. Now, yesterday we were looking at the rest of whole self, damaged self, and George A. Boyd was talking about that we can learn to heal. We can learn to, develop a personal sort of a plan that will help us to kind of work through some of this stuff. And so what George A. Boyd said was the healing process is assisted by an inventory of the damage and then developing a personal treatment plan to address the aspects of the self that can be rehabilitated. And in some cases, the damage can no longer be remedied, which means you'll have to grieve for your loss, and in time come to an inner acceptance and forgive yourself for your mistake. So it says the next steps are reflecting on each important aspect of your life, setting realistic goals, then determining a way to reach these goals. And by writing down these goals, you will be on your way to dealing with a painful past and creating a brighter future, brighter present and future for yourself. And so this is what the next portion of this is all about. And so he says we're supposed to take a look at all these different aspects of our life, and we're supposed to ask where am I right now in each one of these aspects. And I believe that we're supposed to write this down as part of this little exercise that George A. Boyd has written down here. And this is really quite interesting. I probably will do this on my own, maybe later on, another week or two when I'll have more time. I'll probably actually write this down and actually go through this, right? To take a sort of a self-assessment of where I am right now and what I need to work through. And I think, when we're working with this when we're doing these types of things and journaling, working on inventories of where we're at in our life and what's going on and how we're feeling and how we're handling things, I think it's important as adult survivors of child abuse, to be honest with ourselves. For me to write down that I'm doing great in one area when I'm actually not just won't help the situation. It's a good idea to sort of really take time to think about where we're at instead of rushing through it. And I think that's why I'm not in a hurry to do it. I'll just do it on a day when I actually have time to sit down and think about where I am in my life. And I know certain areas right now that I need to work on, and a lot, you know what I mean? A lot of different areas in my life that I need to work on. So, I thought I might do this. I'm going to probably end up doing this in the next week or so and sit down and see just where I'm at as far as, how I feel I'm doing. And so George A. Boyd says, the first inventory of the following aspects of your life, asking where I am now for each area. And he lists my physical health and appearance, my home and living environment, my emotional life, my relationships, my recovery from addiction and dysfunctional patterns, my mental life and education, my career and work life, my finances, my involvement in the community, my hobbies, interests in other cultures, my desires to travel, my ethics and principles I live by, my spiritual life. And then he says, down here he says, write as fully on each subject as possible. And he says, be honest. You may also wish to elicit feedback from supportive friends or coworkers who aren't too timid to level with you about how you're doing in your career or in your relationships, in case you may be laboring under any delusions that you are doing fine when you really aren't. And that's what I was talking about yesterday was, there's a lot of times people who have survived abuse, are grown up in dysfunctional homes, dysfunctional families. Quite often, we just have to roll with the punches, you know what I mean? You just roll with whatever's coming at you. As a child, you're forced into that. I know, growing up in an abusive home, I mean, my God, there wasn't anything I could do about the treatment I was receiving. It didn't matter how bad or how good my attitude was. I was still going to be abused. I tried it out. I actually used to try to be on my best behavior for a long time, and then it didn't work. So then I started to rebel and act out, and of course that didn't help matters. So either way, I was going to be abused. So I didn't really, it didn't deter me to not misbehave, because I thought, well, I'm going to be abused whether I misbehave or whether I behave well and behave like I should be as a child or as a young person. So, it is not our fault, right? This abuse that was put on us. If you were abused as a child, it is not your fault. It's never your fault. It's the abuser's fault for making the wrong choice, And so, we've had to deal with this so quite often in adult survivors of child abuse. When children are growing up in that, they have to keep going if they, to survive. So quite often we're used to just rolling with the punches and getting back up and saying, okay, I'm okay, and no matter what the abuse was, whether it was physical, verbal, emotional, psychological abuse, child sexual abuse or neglect, right? We get used to being with some sort of resilience built in there to survive, right? That's what it takes. So you get used to not getting any help, and you get used to just getting up and rolling the punches and saying, okay, I can take it, I can do it, So it's, as an adult then, after surviving that, quite often we do the same thing. And we think we say things are fine. Like, I know I've been doing this my whole life. Oh, no, it's all good, when it's not all good, But I'm just so used to that. I'm used to having to do that just to survive. So, I think that's why they were saying, to, make sure that we're not under any delusions, that we're doing fine when actually we're really not. And be honest in our assessment when we're actually going to do these types of exercises as far as writing, journaling, or writing down, where we're at in our life, or whatever kind of, exercises we're going to try to do through our healing journey, right? So he says, next you want to set some clear goals at each of these areas of your life, and both the ones you are not having problems in and the ones you are having problems in. It says you can get out a new sheet of paper and make 3 columns, like this. And he lists this. He actually shows this diagram. First column being area of my life, second column being my goals, and third column when I will complete this. And so he says you need to be realistic about when you can accomplish these goals and not be too hard on yourself if you fail to meet a deadline. Just figure out what went wrong, revise your deadline, and try a new and better approach. Your goal statements should be concrete, not like I want to be happy, but I want to be better. I want to better cope with the situations and people that frustrate me, or I want to be earning 125% of my current income by December of next year. To be more he says concrete, but I would say to be more specific, like if we're going to write down goals, they need to be achievable, first of all. It's really no good to write down goals that you're never going to be able to obtain. I used to do that, and and then I'd be like, what's not happening, and it'll never happen, and then I become sort of depressed about it, like down, because I'm thinking I'll never be able to reach that goal. And what I started doing then was setting some really small, like shorter term goals, saying, okay, this goal, this will be like a 1-year goal, this is what I'm going to do, or this is a 5-year goal, and this is what I'm going to do, and make it more attainable, because these little goals, are very important. Setting some goals for ourselves is very important. I think that it does help to keep our mind focused on the future, rather than, to allow ourselves to experience some of present life as well. While we try to obtain these goals, we have to be in the present to do that. So it sort of helps you to have some hope in your life, I think. I set goals all the time, and some of them, happen, and some of them don't. Some of them I pursue, some of them I don't. It's just things change all the time. But I've always been, especially as an adult, interested in setting goals, because I realized that I had a lot of dreams, and there were things that I wanted to do and things that I thought I would like to try and like to do. And so I have tried and have done a lot of things, But that's because I specifically set out to do these little goals that some people might think, well, that's not very exciting. But, we're all different, right? We all have different desires, different wants, different dreams, different needs. And so whatever works for you. And so I started setting smaller goals. And then once you obtain some of those smaller goals, it feels really good, because you're like, wow, I did this. I actually made it. I made it happen. And then you start to realize that, hey, I can do this. And it does help build a lot of confidence, and it does help boost your self-esteem. And I think that's really important, not to set the goals too high, because I know myself, I've been doing that my whole life, and then thinking, well, it's never going to happen, and then, of course, falling right back down into that pit of kind of feeling like I can't do it, I'm kind of worthless. And that's because I was told that as a child, that I was worthless and useless and never going to amount to anything, and I should have been born dead. My mother used to tell me that on a regular basis, that I should have died with the other stillborn babies, right? I mean, so this sort of stuff runs through my mind when things aren't working right. It's like, well, yeah, my mother's voice will come in there, telling me some horrific thing, and I'll be like, well, that's just great. And of course, I'm already down by that time, so, these flashbacks and whatnot, memories come back and to haunt me. So I just chose to start setting shorter term goals that are more obtainable, and it did help. And so now today, that's what I do. I don't set any goals that are too far out there, because they just, if they're unrealistic, it sets us up to feel that kind of useless, or that we can't do it, or it's never going to happen. And it's too easy to say that. It's too easy to say that if we set those goals that are too high. Of course we can say, oh, well, I'll never be able to obtain that, because it's so far out of reach. But I think it's important to have some of those long-term goals. I set a long-term goal a long, long time ago that I wanted to have a bed and breakfast, when I got older, and more like a small inn, and have because I went to cooking school. I love to cook, and but I don't have a family to cook for, see. So I thought, well, it'd be fun to have a bed and breakfast, be like, you could cook, and you could, help these people while they're there to find out and explore the area, and, to learn about the history of the area and stuff. I thought that'd be so much fun. But of course, that is completely unobtainable right now, unless I win the lottery or something, or, there's no rich relative going to leave me any money. It's, that goal is somewhere sitting off in the back of my mind that I'd love to do, but it's not something that I'm concerned about right now, because obviously I can't do it. So I don't let that one even enter into the fact that, I can't do it, because obviously in my situation right now, there's just no possible way. But there's these little goals we can set for ourselves, and I think that's very important to do, because it does give us something to hope for and to reach for and to work on, in a positive note. I know, because I spend a lot of time thinking about my past, so I have to have a balance. I have to have things that I can concentrate in the present, so I can stay in the present. I have to have things that I can concentrate on for the future, and that's so I can be hopeful about the future. But I definitely don't set my goals too high, because I like to obtain some of these goals, because otherwise I start feeling like, oh man, I'm just not getting anything right. And, and that's not good, right? Especially growing up abused, we have these issues where, many times low self-esteem, lack of confidence, feeling, like that child that we were so many years ago, being told these horrible things that were not true. But nevertheless, the damage is done, right? So we have to not set ourselves up for further disappointment. I think it's very important. And I think it's important to set out with some goals, though, just small steps. So next, you need to determine what will help you achieve each of your goals. So he says, get out a third sheet of blank paper. Get out a third sheet of blank paper. Make 3 columns, and he shows us on this diagram, www.madrashram.com/dysfunctionalfamily2.html. And the first column is my goal. The second column is what will help me complete this, and the third column is comments. So it says you want to briefly restate your goal and think of what will help you reach your goal. And the comment section is for a brief comment, like completed on this date or whatever, or decided against this on advice of my sponsor or therapist, or you may wish to do this one in pencil so you can add or revise items on it. And then he says, I call it a success spreadsheet. So it just gives people some tips, what we can do, right, to so we can see if we're reaching our goals and what's happened, what's sort of that we need to work on. And so he says a sample success spreadsheet might be like my goal, better self-esteem, right? And then he says, what will help me complete this? Get therapy or counseling, read good books about building self-esteem, complete some goals so I feel better about myself. And then another one might be less of a doormat. And then that's one of the goals, be less of a doormat. And then he says, what will help me complete this? He says, take an assertiveness training class, read a book on assertiveness training. And then another goal might be set better limits. And so then what will help me complete this would be like decide what are appropriate limits on someone's behavior, say no when I mean no, practice my assertiveness skills, right? Setting boundaries and limits. Talk over with my therapist why I'm in this relationship and things like this. So these can be all, any number of different types of goals for ourselves, right? Improve my relationship with my boss is one goal that they wrote here, just for an example. Discuss relationships with authority figures with my therapist. Work in my journal about resentments towards mom and dad. This is what he's listed here. And I mean, this is stuff that this is like for me. I mean, I relate to this stuff because, I have had so many problems in my working relationships because everything's okay as long as things are going well. But the minute somebody gets upset with my work or somebody doesn't like something I've done, it automatically puts me down to feel like that. Well, like I did as a child with the 2 authority figures in my life who were highly abusive, and so it takes me right back down into the pits of sort of despair, just thinking, I'm no good and I can't do it, and I'm just useless and I'm just a waste of time, and I shouldn't even be here. And then before you know it, I'm talked myself out of the job, and quite often leave jobs because of that, and instead of talking, learning how to discuss things with supervisors or with bosses that, maybe I feel it was, could have been handled better, what I mean, even on their end. So what I had a situation come up a while back that when I first started Blog Talk Radio, actually November 2009, that it really, I was ready to quit the job, and this one life coach actually talked me into, she didn't talk me into it. What she did was she talked me through the situation and showed me, what I was doing to self-sabotage, which was really interesting because I had no idea I was even doing that. I didn't realize that my behavior was, that I was doing that, you know what I mean? Because I couldn't see it myself, and I had been doing that all my life, so it wasn't something I even recognized as a problem. And I was just living this way for a long time, right? Just if something goes wrong, I leave. Something goes wrong, I quit. I mean, that's what I do in relationships. That's what I do my whole life. That's what I've been doing, and that's because I'm so tired of fighting. I'm so tired of having people be abusive towards me, and even if they don't mean to be, I think it's just that I'm just so sick and tired of it. So, but she said you don't have to quit the job. You can actually keep your job, and you can learn how to deal with some of this stuff, or you can keep running, right? And so that's the issue, right? Like, I mean, I was just running all the time, and running. I've still been doing all my life, and that's just, me as an adult running away as a child, right? It's just like it's the same thing, you know what I mean? And for me, quitting these jobs that were pretty good. I mean, we're talking good jobs, and all because of confrontation, So I actually, over the last couple of years, have been really working on that. So that's something that I can see. I've made some changes in the way that I handle things and the way that I, approach things, and it has helped a lot. And so, but without somebody pointing that out to me, I really didn't see it myself. So that's why it's important to get some help with this stuff if we need it, right? Another one is to disclose myself, and then that's a goal that he's got written here. He says, work on trusting with my therapist more fully so I could feel safer in intimate relationships, journal on my fears of talking to my parents, make a list of what I am afraid to tell them about myself, and tell them and tell other people, things about ourselves, right? Just learning to disclose ourselves. And it's hard to do that, especially if we've never really had anybody to talk to or haven't really ever done that. Many people haven't done that. So they keep themselves very private, very much closed off, and nobody really knows who they are. And it's hard when we actually start doing that, to come out and actually allow yourself to tell people about yourself, or to tell people what happened to you, or talk to people or trust people enough with that information. You do have to be very careful who you tell and what you tell, because not everyone is trustworthy. That's a fact, and everyone has the potential to hurt everyone. Anyone can hurt anyone at any time, and that's the whole issue. It's there's no such thing as a person's just some perfect person out there that's just never going to hurt anybody. It's just the fact that as long as you set boundaries for yourself and and make it very clear that this is what you're going to allow in your life, this is what you're not going to allow in your life. You want to be treated with respect, so you treat other people with respect. I mean, most people actually recognize that. That's something that most people do recognize, and you have to have boundaries so that you will not allow yourself to be re-victimized or be treated horribly again. You know what I mean? As an adult, and we have to be careful. So you do have to be very careful, I think, and I know that I am. But I do try to give people the benefit of the doubt, and the reason being is I want people to do the same for me. You know what I mean? It's great when you find out somebody actually trusts you, and it's a really good feeling, And so, I know lots of people have given me the benefit of the doubt and trust me, and I think that's awesome. So I figure, well, I got to do the same for other people. You know what I mean? But I have a real tendency to, the minute somebody does something I don't like, I can cut people out really quickly. So I'm trying to work on that, because a lot of times I don't even give people the chance to apologize. I'm just like, nope, that's it, bye, because I don't want to take any more abuse of anybody. So I don't care who it is, and I'm just tired of it. And I just don't think people should try to treat people more decently. And so I have a tendency to shut people out really quickly, with no problem at all. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, well, you're going to be like that, you have no business being in my life. But, I think there's other ways to handle that, especially if the person wasn't really meaning to be abusive and they just slipped up and made a mistake, But a lot of times, I've had situations in my life where, in my adult life, not in my childhood, where I felt they owed me an apology, you know what I mean, because of their behavior. They would not apologize, so I cut them out. I just shut them out and shut them off and bye-bye. Because when I make a mistake, I apologize. And if somebody comes to me and says, look, something that you've done has hurt my feelings, or something that you said that has hurt my feelings, I'm always like, oh my God, I'm sorry. I'm willing to say I'm sorry. I do make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. But there's a lot of people out there who will not apologize, and they don't care if they hurt your feelings. And I grew up like that, with parents who did not care if they hurt us in any way. They didn't care, right? And so I thought, as an adult, if somebody, knowingly knows they've hurt me and cannot apologize, they're out of my life. And that for sure is one thing that is 100% concrete as far as a boundary goes. Because I know myself, everybody makes mistakes, but I'm always willing to apologize and try to make it right. But somebody, I will not allow somebody to be in my life who will not admit that they were wrong, or not be able to apologize. Because there's a lot of people out there that will hurt other people and then feel justified. That was my parents. You know what I mean? That's a lot of people out there who feel that it's okay to hurt people and that they don't have to apologize because their behavior was fine. My parents thought it was perfectly fine to do what they did to their children. I was talking about that yesterday on the show. And, abusers, right? Abusive types. People who think that their behavior is just fine and it's okay for them to hurt you. And, it's not, right? And so we have to be very, very sure of our boundaries. And I think it's important as survivors of child abuse to get, to learn how to to develop some of those boundaries, because the boundaries are crossed. You know, if you're growing up in a dysfunctional home and in a violent home or an abusive home, those boundaries are crossed. Physical boundaries are crossed, you know. Emotional boundaries are crossed. Psychological boundaries are crossed. The whole thing, it's crossed. I mean, and it's so many times, you know, I mean, my parents didn't show any proper boundaries, so we didn't learn any. And so my sister, I was talking about this on some shows not too long ago. My sister, every relationship she's ever been in with a man, like a marriage or a boyfriend type thing, every single one of them has abused her. Every single one. And she has no ability to set boundaries. She's a doormat. She will let people walk all over her, mistreat her, and she will take it and put up with it for years. Years, you know, as an adult. Away from, you know, we're talking many years after childhood. I mean, she grew up in the same home I did, you know what I mean? So, but she's just not able to set boundaries. She doesn't even understand that there should be boundaries, and that, you know, it's not okay for people to do these things to people. You know, I mean, she divorced her husband after, like, I don't know how many years of marriage, 13 years of marriage or something. Finally got away from him, which was great, because he was an abuser and he was a bad man. And so we were so happy when she finally divorced him. But then she got into another relationship for like 7 years where she was just a doormat. You know, she was just being taken advantage of and being verbally, psychologically abused. Not physically. The first marriage was physical abuse, but her second relationship was verbal, psychological abuse. You know, it's just sad, because many survivors, that's not just one person, my sister, you know, many people end up in that, you know. My mother did. My mother was abused as a child and then ended up in this marriage with this man who was abusive. And I think he was abusive even when they were dating. I don't know why she married him, but, well, she married him to get away from her mother is why she married him, because my parents were born in the 1920s, and back then things were different. You know, it was a little harder for a woman to go and try to make it on their own. And, you know, I'm sure, like I heard from my mother and other people that, you know, there was already problems in their relationship before they were married, but she married him anyway. And so she spent her whole life with this man, you know what I mean? And so this type of dysfunction, this type of, you know, abusive, you know, garbage, right? I mean, it takes its toll. And if you don't learn how to set boundaries, you know, then people have the chance that you could be re-victimized as an adult, and I think that's horrible. And that's what I refused to do, watching my mother be abused. And then, you know, well, of course, she was my main abuser, but still, I didn't want to see her suffer. I did not want to see her, you know, her whole life, you know, ruined by abuse, knowing that she was abused as a child, and so then in this ridiculous marriage with my dad. And, you know, I mean, I that's what really forced me to say, I'm not going to allow that in my life, you know. I refuse to go that way, you know, to go that route. And then to watch my sister in these abusive relationships, you know, she has no ability to set boundaries and say what she will allow in her life, what she won't allow. She just lets people walk all over her. So I'm kind of the opposite. I don't let people get away with much, you know. And the minute that they think they're going to, they're out of my life. And so I have very few friends because I go overboard, because it's a self-protection, right? It's kind of like, no, you're not going to hurt me, so bye-bye. I almost push people away before they even have a chance to hurt me. That's where I go a little bit overboard and wrong, because, you know, I don't even give people the benefit of the doubt a lot of times, and I just push people out just in case they were thinking about hurting me, right? And that's from being a child growing up in this abusive mess. So, you know, it can go either way. We do have to we do have to get some help with this, and, you know, whatever works for you, you know what I mean? Whether it's the life coach, group support, you know, therapist, counselor, but whatever it is, you know, make sure that, you know, you do get some help and especially if you can't cope and you're just feeling like, oh my God, I can't cope and I don't know what I'm going to do, and I've been there, so I know. And you know, call a crisis line. That's what those people are there for, and you know that they wouldn't be doing it otherwise, because it's not a great paying job. They're there because they care, and they may have had someone in their family who maybe didn't make it and committed suicide, or maybe they tried, and you know, maybe, you know, they just care, right? I've talked to some awesome people out there, so make sure that you do. If you need help, you call a crisis line, right? Thanks everybody for being here, and we'll finish the rest of this up on Monday, and then we'll probably change to another topic. And there's another little bit of it to go, and I want to finish it, so we'll look at it Monday. But take care of yourselves, everybody. I'll be back around on the weekend and tonight. And thanks everybody for tuning in. And you know, if you're having a hard time, make sure you reach out. If there's nobody around because there's nobody home or nobody to talk to, you phone a crisis line or you get some help, right? You stick it out. Never give up. I'm telling you, never ever give up. You know, there's another day coming. There may be some bad days, but there's good days too. And if we don't stick around, we won't be able to experience them. So make sure that you do stick around, right? Have a great day, everybody. Talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.